Hey everybody, it's Zach again with Policy Best. Welcome to our fourth budget video where we talk about how big Georgia's surplus is this year. Now to begin, we need to know how much our revenue has increased from last year. By that, you just take the fiscal year 2017 estimated revenues and you subtract the fiscal year 2016 actual revenues and you get an estimated $1.91 billion in increased revenue. But all this money isn't surplus and available for new spending, tax cuts, or to store in the rainy day fund. Georgia has certain categories of spending that are somewhat fixed and increase with population growth and or inflation. We'll look at a few of those now. House Bill 170 was passed last year to increase spending on transportation. By Constitution and by law set forth in that bill, all of the money raised under HB 170 must be appropriated for transportation purposes. As such, the funds raised under this bill isn't surplus money, but is instead a large increase in revenue earmarked to a specific purpose. Then we have what we'll call state entitlements. These are programs that have fixed costs where the state pays into programs based on population growth and or costs that are not controlled by the state. If the state were to not fund these, the result would be cuts in payments to beneficiaries such as local school boards, state employees, or underfunding liabilities and pension plans. We'll explain that in more detail in a moment. First, we'll start by discounting the revenue increases from HB 170 to get the real surplus. By doing that, you'll see that we reduce the supposed surplus by $825 million, bringing it from $1.9 billion to just over $1 billion. Now we're going to explain how the state considers some increased spending mandatory, and thus we refer to those programs as state entitlements. Let's start with K through 12 education. The state pays local school districts based on a formula for each student they teach. Georgia is growing, and thus every year the number of students the state pays for goes up. If the state didn't increase this amount according to the formula, local districts would see a cut. As such, the additional amount sent to local school districts to cover their enrollment growth isn't considered discretionary spending, but the spending that was already baked into the state budget's cake. This year, the enrollment growth in Georgia's public schools, along with additional funds to make up for austerity cuts made during the recession, required the state to spend an additional $414 million more than last year. This brings the increase in funds available for discretionary spending down to around $700 million. Next, let's talk about higher education. Similar to K through 12 education, Georgia has a funding model that is based on enrollment. As enrollment grows, so does the amount the state spends on higher education. This year, Georgia spent $134 million to account for the enrollment growth over last year. Next, let's talk about Medicaid increases. Despite Georgia not expanding Medicaid coverage under the ACA, the penalties for Georgians who aren't covered by insurance has motivated many who are eligible for Medicaid to sign up for the program. We all also know that health care costs have been rising faster than the rate of inflation. These two factors continue to push the amount paid for Georgia's share of the existing Medicaid program up year over year. This year, the increased costs account for $136 million in the revenue increases over last year. All of those required increases of spending account for $1.5 billion and means our real surplus is $401 million. Finally, let's talk about where this $401 million surplus is proposed to go under Governor Deal's budget proposal in January. The largest new addition of cost are pay raises for state employees, which are going to make up $239 million. Next, you have $60 million in increases for child and adult protective services. Thirdly, you have $6 million in increases for behavioral health crisis centers and 100 now waivers. And finally, you have $93 million in debt services to enable the $850 million in new bonds. And that's our fourth video. Thank you for watching, and please check out our video next time where we talk about how Georgia's budget has changed over time.